Always.
And we are live.
I think I'll give just a couple more minutes. I'm expecting a couple of other committee members to join us. Give them a couple of minutes and then we'll proceed.
We're ready. I'm here all day.
Where does this plug into?
If you would, yeah.
Over here?
Yeah, hold on, boss.
There's only one plug that looks right.
That's the one.
Say something, boss. Who was that,
There you go.
that female comedian that used to say one ringy dingy, two ringy dingy?
Lily Tomlin.
Yes,
That's right.
yes, yes. Hey, Ron, question. I know
Answer.
Stewart used to have one. Do we have one of those measuring wheels for measuring distance?
The police may. Where you need it at, I may be able to do it by lodge.
No, my staff.
Can't hear you, Lynn.
So, oops, I had my finger over the button. My scout who's doing the replacing the mile marker post along the Orange Trail, he will need to go back and measure and verify all of that. So
Oh, yeah, no,
I'm
I
trying
can't
to find
do
him a
that.
measuring wheel.
Let me ask the police department if they still got theirs.
I think we used one before. I don't know where it came from for the original mileage markers.
I think Stewart had one.
Oh, okay.
And then if I remember, I think the handle was broken. It was kind of like taped together. So something that's a little more reliable. And it's one of those things, you don't want to buy one. They're about $30-40. I mean, for an individual, what do you do with it? But
I
every
believe the
now and
police
then
department's got one.
you need one. Okay. That'd make sense for them.
Well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the March meeting of the Prospect Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. And the first item of business is the approval of 2 January meetings and the February meetings. If you remember last month, we didn't have a quorum. So Ron, can you send Sarah Odell the link to, I guess she wants me to, I think Sarah needs to call in and I think what she needs is the WebEx. Okay. Sorry. I don't know if there are any corrections or changes that need to be made.
They all look good to me if we can approve them all at once. I would move.
So move.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is any update that Mayor Evans would like to give.
They always ask for that, and, okay. I guess the most important thing for this group is the proposed amended budget for the current fiscal year, which came up Monday night for a second reading and passage. And it was blocked by Frank Fulcher, because it didn't have the deleted thing crossed out. And it was exactly the same format we've used for the last 10 years, but it wasn't precisely what the statute called for, so we couldn't enact it Monday night. So that's still hanging out there. I have called a special council meeting for this Friday afternoon at 2:00 for two purposes. The main purpose of which is to take up again, now that we've put those lines through stuff, to take up again the passage of the amended budget. Why does the Parks Committee care? Because about $188,000 of the ARPA money, which currently is not in the Parks budget, would be. And that is probably, I'd say, close to necessary for the further development going forward of the development of Little Honey Creek Park, considering putting the boardwalk from behind City Hall over across Putney Pond, which is one of the things you may want to be looking at, building your bridge down in Arts Creek Park, things like that. So that's coming up Friday afternoon at 2:00 in case you want to tune in. Just as a matter of interest, the other item coming up is an ordinance amendment proposed by Councilman Greg Hulsman to increase the salaries of the council members from $100 a month to $250 a month. Greg has done some research in other cities, concluded that ours was the lowest. Anyway, that's where that is. That does not have unanimous support on the council, but it probably has majority support, so we'll see what happens to that. As far as the Parks Committee is concerned, those are the things that occur to me that are of interest to you. The other things that may be of interest were things that I announced Monday night at the meeting, the council, if you were there, if you listened to it. So if there are any questions about any of those things, let me know.
Any questions for Mayor Evans? Okay. Well, let's move on to the next agenda item, the parks update. And we've got quite a bit to report, I think. I was out hiking the trails the other day and decided to look at the bluebird boxes and just make sure they were cleaned out and ready for nesting. And none of the boxes had any nesting material in it. And I think that's because we sort of put them up in the summertime, and I think birds were not creating new nests at that time. But they're all in order and clean, and hopefully we'll get some activity this summer.
Yeah, I think it's a bit early yet.
The mayor just talked about the Harrods Creek Bridge project. We're waiting to, if the budget amendment is passed, and hopefully we can use some of the money to build the bridge. My goal is to try to have that done in time for our 10th anniversary of Harrods Creek Park. So I guess stay tuned. We'll see what happens on Friday. We have some trail improvement projects, the Blue and Green Trail. I have been in touch with Steve Emily with OHM to ask him to give us a proposal for the preliminary work that his firm was going to do in order to allow us to get estimates for the actual work. I have not received that yet, but I will touch base with him again and try to make sure that's in progress or in process. The invasive plant removal, there's a couple of things to report. ICF has completed the work at Putney Pond that we had in the budget this year. So they've now spent, or they have done all of the work budgeted for invasive plant removal, both at Harrods Creek Park and at Putney Pond. If we have remaining budget available, we can always see if we can get additional work done before the end of this fiscal year, but that's sort of up in the air right now until we know what happens with some of the other projects. I also contacted ICF on behalf of an idea that I proposed to the Forestation Board, Lee Tusi. The land between the Putney Pond Dam and Timber Ridge Drive is not officially part of the Putney Pond and Woodlands Park, but it is city property. And there are a lot of very large vines that are choking out the trees there. There's also invasive plants in the understory. And what I proposed to Lee is that we request, kind of as a joint project between Parks and Recreation and the Forestation Board, you know, we're interested in the bushes and the other things. The Forestation Board is interested in the health of the trees. The people at ICF have told me if you want a healthy wooded lot, you need to take care of the understory invasive plants as well. So we do have an estimate for the initial year for that work, and that would be $4,500. And Lee presented that as a potential project to use some of the ARPA money. And I think he's thinking about in next fiscal year rather than trying to use that for the budget amendment for this year. As I think all of you know, we do have dates for the wildflower walks. They will be April 10th and April 24th at the Montero Drive entrance to Harrods Creek Park. And once again, Jacqueline McGrail will lead those. We do have, traditionally, we have had someone as a volunteer in the parking lot for people that aren't comfortable doing the stream crossing. And so I've got, I think both Sally and Sarah are able to do the first weekend. And I can do both weekends, but we could use another volunteer for the 24th. If anyone's interested, you can let me know. If no one on the committee is interested, I've got a couple of ideas of people that I will approach. There's also rain dates have been established for Monday. You know, some people actually have to work for a living and maybe can't do a Monday rain date, but I think there are a lot of us that are available during the day. And if it rains on the Sunday, it would be nice to be able to have the walk the following day. And then I would like to invite Ron to talk about the Blue Trail bridges that we've been talking about for the last several months, about trying to get estimates for those to be replaced. So Ron, would you like to talk?
Well, we finally got Jack to give us the numbers. They've been approved, so I sent him the signed order yesterday. So the first two bridges on the Blue Trail will soon be the nice ones with handrails and, you know, the professional looking ones.
One of the things that was said in one of the recent council meetings was that we really need to continue to make our parks more accessible, not ADA, but for older people or people that have a little lesser mobility abilities. And so this is one of the ways we're doing that, because these bridges will definitely be safe and sturdy and should last for a number of years. So I'm very pleased that that's going.
Linda, can I ask one question on that?
Sure, sure.
So over on the Green Trail, there's one area that is consistently staying wet all the time that, used not to. That there's just like one rock that's in and it's kind of loose that you can step on to get over. So if someone can't really leap there, it's always wet, very wet there.
Yeah,
And yeah. So I just wonder if that's a place that we've thought about adding something that to make it easier for someone to get across there.
we've done a couple of things. I personally put a bunch of stones that I dragged up from the creek. Uh, and then Stuart came and tried to trench that area to kind of, allow the water to drain a little bit more. I think, maybe Ron and I can take a look at that. The problem is, whatever you put down there, that creek floods, and that's a part of the trail that's very close to the creek. Our thinking is that a spring has maybe opened up there because it didn't used to be wet all the time. And I agree.
No, I agree.
It's always wet now. So I don't know, Ron, if you have any thoughts about that.
Not exactly sure where we're talking about.
Yeah, I have a photo of it. I'll send you, Ron, to see if that helps. And then I also noticed this week down on the Red Trail that there's something eating at one of the bridges. It's got new gnaw marks on it underneath it. I took a picture of that too.
Probably a beaver.
Yeah.
You know what,
Beaver or
Sally?
squirrel.
You were talking about an area of the Green Trail that's wet.
I was at Green. Yeah.
Yeah, I was referring to the Red Trail, that portion that's wet too.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure where you meet on the Green Trail either.
Okay. Well, I'll send photos to both of you all.
Okay.
It's just something that I've noticed because when I went myself a couple of weeks ago and I tried to hit the stone that's in there, my foot slipped, and then I was in mud up to my ankles, so it's always really muddy there now. So.
Okay, definitely something we should take a look at. Thank you, Sally.
Sure.
Does anyone have, Sarah's, or I don't know if either Sarah or the mayor have anything to add about the Little Hunting Creek projects?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. I don't think Herb Schleifer is at our meeting here today, but Herb's very active and is eager, sort of an understatement, to put the entire project out for bids. And I told him earlier this week, holding off on doing that until I see what the council does about the amended budget. If they go ahead and approve it, we'll go ahead and we'll put the whole thing out for bids right away.
Does everyone on the committee know what types of things are being planned, or do we need a little more description?
Well, I can tell you what I know, which is most of it at least, and David Holmes probably knows as much or more. One of the things is the playground, and Sarah Odell is, the way I look at it, Sarah's in charge of that. And Sarah, I'm not sure, maybe you can tell me now, when we'd have to pay for that. It's about $100,000 for the playground.
Yeah, it's 100K even, and it's due no later than 30 days after install. So I'm sure that they would take our money whenever we were prepared to give it to them. But otherwise,
But how soon would they demand it?
30 days after install.
Well, when's that?
They have to do the earthwork in the park, so over the summer.
So that could very well be in the next fiscal year, July 1 forward.
Yes.
So Sarah, before we pay, don't we have to know whether we've gotten the grant or not? Otherwise, if you go ahead and do work, you can't get reimbursed for it unless the grant's been approved, right?
Well, the grant is one set of funds, and ARPA is a separate set of funds. So whichever ones that the city chooses to use, those are totally independent items. I still have not heard anything, any updates on the grant, and I think it's still due to the late passing of state and federal budgets, because obviously those are it's federal money, but it comes down to the state. So there is, I think, a delay in that. And even the delayed timeline, they said March, you'd find out no later than, and here we are, you know what I mean? March is quickly going away. But you are correct that anything you do beforehand, it doesn't get reimbursed, but it's based on the bill date, not on, so it wouldn't be the install date, it would be the invoice date. And then I have talked to the playground company about that and how do they deliver invoices, and how are the, you know, what dates are they choosing, et cetera. And that's something that we will be able to work with them on, potentially, depending on what occurs. So.
All right, other than the playground, there are a lot of moving parts. The single biggest item is the construction of the pavilion. We already have paid more than $20,000 to the architectural firm for them to design the thing and then turn around and redesign it, so it would be less costly. The pavilion itself will probably cost $175,000, exclusive of things like water supply to the fountains around it, the electrical lines that run over to it. It gets a little complicated. Then on top of that, you've got earth moving. You've got the construction of the parking lot expansion. So the whole project is probably going to be $400,000, counting the playground, more than 400. And it is just a stroke of luck that this project came along and is inspired in part by the fact that as of this coming June, we will have received almost $1.3 million in ARPA funds. Then it gets complicated from there. I don't know how much you want to get in the weeds about this. In order for us to spend ARPA money directly to, say, somebody who builds a pavilion, you got to jump through a bunch of hoops as far as various administrative requirements, reporting requirements, all that. But if you don't spend the money on things like that, instead you spend it, just say, on salaries, you don't have to do any of that reporting. So my thinking, and others, is that these dollars don't have flags on them, okay? So we get that 1.3 million, it goes into the budget, into general revenue, and we treat it as having been spent entirely on police salaries, salaries of staff, and all that. But the money is still there that we would have spent on those salaries out of tax money to devote to the projects like the pavilion and the parking lot and so forth. If I've made sense to you, but you know, one way of thinking of it is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it works, and it solves an administrative problem that we otherwise would have to deal with. So that's the report on where we are with going forward with the Little Hunting Creek Park.
Are there any other questions or comments?
And then, kind of connected to Little Hunting Creek Park, there's the proposal or idea of building a boardwalk from behind City Hall all the way across Putney Pond, connecting the landings into the City Hall area, Little Hunting Creek area. And I personally like that idea very much. Ron has scoped it out 3 different ways, one of which would cost somewhere around $210,000 to build this boardwalk across there. There again, could be paid for directly or indirectly out of ARPA money. And it achieves one of the things that people in the survey said they particularly wanted, which is greater pedestrian connectivity between the neighborhoods.
Right. The one thing we need to be sure of, if we're going to move forward with a plan for that, is that we need permission from the Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund Board. They meet 4 times a year. So I should probably find out when their next meeting is. Typically, if you have a special request, I believe you have to submit it. I don't know if it's 2 weeks or a month in advance of their meeting. And you can, this could be done with probably just a letter with our design plans. And they've been pretty easy to work with so far. And they did give us permission for the Boy Scout boardwalk, which is partly on Putney Pond and Woodlands property. This would be expanding that boardwalk system, so we'd have to make sure they're in approval of that.
Can we get going with that just in case?
Yeah, I will make a note to find out when their next meeting is and what they require.
Good.
And I can send an email today to our contact.
Great.
Lynn, do you have anything to report on the Boy Scouts or Scouts? Oop, you're muted.
Can't hear you, Lynn.
How about that? All right, finally.
There you go.
Okay. We do have 2 Eagle Scout candidates who are on this right now, and they're in the process of getting their proposals written. We've got Levi Lucas is our senior patrol leader for Troop 30, and he's agreed to go back and to do the mile markers along the Orange Trail, and then also right up there behind the kiosk by the parking lot, do the trail repair up there, bring in some gravel, that kind of thing. And so we're in the process of getting that written up. And then Troop 30 Scout Seth Jolly is looking at replacing the bridge with the handrail section missing. And I went back and Ronnie, you probably see it too. The problem with that when it was put in is it's sitting on top of stone on one side and roots on the other. It just wasn't attached very well. And it's really kind of a bad spot for it. It's a great walking spot, but we're going to probably move that thing down about 40, 50 feet and cross where we don't have to deal with the rocks or tree roots. And so I haven't gotten those back from them yet, but they're working on them. So we got a couple things going, it's a good time of year for Eagle Scouts and Eagle projects.
Do you expect that these projects would be done sometime late spring or over the summer?
I would think over the summer to early fall
Okay.
would be when they would do it.
Great. Okay, any other questions for Lynn? Okay. The next item on the agenda is a proposed meeting date and time for the month of April. Monday, April 11th at 5. Does that work for people? And the other question I have is, Mayor, maybe you can answer this. I don't know what the thought is. Are we going to continue to have remote committee meetings or hybrid or in-person only moving forward? I'm not sure what the thinking is right now.
Well, I think it's up to you. Your judgment on these Paris matters is as good as mine. We've relaxed around here pretty much. I've been going to the council meetings in person. Many of the council members are. So if you want to start meeting in person, I would suggest using a large venue like the council room where everybody can really spread out as opposed to being cramped in a smaller space. So I'd say it's up to you, that the
What are
committee.
the opinions of committee members?
I like the picnic table down at the park.
I
As
I
long-
mean,
agree. Those were nice meetings.
Yeah.
It's time to
Do
be.
that.
or
Do
the
that.
gazebo, I think was great in the roundabout there.
Meeting called for rain.
Yeah.
Well, there's that.
Well, the gazebo is covered. We could meet even if it rains.
So Linda, at this meeting, will we be bringing suggestions to you for the Parks and Recreation budget for the upcoming year?
Yes, in fact, that was something I was going to mention under the other business. I think we have two things we really need to be looking at. We need to be thinking about next year's budget. And we also need to be thinking about the 10th anniversary celebration of Harrods Creek Park and other kinds of programs or activities we'd like to start bringing back. So I would see those items as being key for our next Parks meeting.
I have a couple ideas about that.
Would you like to share them now, or would you like to?
Oh, if you want me to, sure. I think we should go back to having a fall festival around Halloween. We used to have them in Little Hunting Creek Park. We'd have a hay wagon with hay on it, pulled by a tractor, would take people back to the trails, the Putney Pond Park trails. Remember we had a bridge with a troll underneath, scary. We had a petting zoo, pumpkins for kids to paint or adults if they want. That's one thing that I'd like to see us bring back. Something that we haven't had before, because we really haven't had a venue for it. But once the pavilion is built, we will have a venue for all kinds of musical or dramatic performances right there at the pavilion. And we could start doing that. And I'd like to see that get up and running. But that ain't going to be ready probably until fall sometime. It's not going to be ready this summer, as far as I can see. But going forward into the next year, yes, it's not too soon to start planning, reaching out to the Oldham County Community Band, the Louisville Orchestra, players like Shakespeare in the Park or others, to see if they'd be interested. I remember a year or two or three ago, the Louisville Orchestra had some kind of a outreach program where they were playing music at the Louisville Zoo and stuff like that. I imagine that they would be open to coming out and giving a concert to us one summer evening, that kind of thing.
John, at the last meeting of the Jefferson County League of Cities, the business manager for the local musicians came in, and he made an appeal for use of musicians throughout the city. He said the city Metro has set aside money to pay them for any event. There's a couple requirements. Basically, it has to be free to the public, and it all pretty much wraps around that. But he says you can get any kind of music, country and western, orchestra, whatever. But you do that, you get that access through Scott Reed. In our case, it would be Scott Reed through Metro Council. There needs to be approval for that. I got his card because I figured we'd want to tap into that as soon as Pavilion or even before.
And I know that a couple of years ago, before COVID, we were working on this, and Sally Schneider spent quite a bit of time and effort working with Randy Swan. And I think she does probably still has some of that information.
Yeah, of course, COVID hit, so everything came to a screeching halt, but there has been some research done in the past on some of this. And I know Randy had some contacts. I don't know how involved she is with things anymore, but, you know, she's someone I could reach out to. And I think I have to go back through. I probably have all the emails we did back and forth, and find everything.
Well, this
There's-
individual, we have his card. He said to call him and call him direct and be happy to arrange it. But one of the requirements is we had to get the money and approval through our Metro Council person, being Scott Reed. So I'll be happy to share that card with you.
We can do
Okay.
that.
Thank you, Don.
There's also a group of musicians that they're Louisville Orchestra musicians, but it's not a formal Louisville Orchestra group, if that makes sense. But they practice at Springdale Presbyterian Church, and they do some community concerts. So I'm guessing they would be more amenable to maybe doing concerts in a smaller venue as opposed to the Louisville Zoo or, you know, someplace with a large seating capacity. So I have a friend that goes to that church. I can ask her for information on that group of musicians.
That would be great.
And if all that fails, I have a granddaughter who's majoring in music at the University of Louisville, and she said she'd be happy to pull some people together and
Oh,
entertain us.
We really wouldn't have to wait until the pavilion is built whenever that gets done. We had a band last 4th of July up at Cali Park, and we could use that venue until we have a pavilion down here. Really, we could use both.
that's true. I thought the band at 4th of July was great last year.
They really were, and they took requests. I had 2 requests. If you're familiar with them, Benny Goodman's Sing, 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 which is really just a rockabutzer. And then I think it was Glenn Miller did a thing called the St. Louis Blues March. And that really gets you going. So they do all these requests. And then you got the Oldham County Community Band, and they're free. Make a contribution of a couple $100 or something.
Yeah, and I know Gordon Costley has a band he plays with some too. And
Oh, I've heard Gordon play. Forget that.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding.
You heard Ron play.
Ron's
I have
group,
not. I've heard you're a
Ron's
musician.
group is good. I mean, he, believe it or not, he's the singer with that group.
Well, we
Is
used
he
to be.
affordable though?
I'm real cheap right now. I'm in between bands, so
Oh,
A lot of talent. But anyway, your middle name is Recreation. So
Right.
you ought to put together a subgroup or something and get working on this.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would like to try to work on is bringing back some bird watching walks as well. We used to have those when the McAllisters lived in town, and I think I've got a line on someone that would be willing to lead a walk. Our friend Dr. Ahrens, I think, would be willing to do that, and he'd be really good. He hikes the trails all the time, bird watching. So
Linda, what was the date of the next planned meeting?
April 11th, Monday, April 11th at 5 o'clock. And
yeah, that worked for me.
I'm sorry.
It works for me. I just looked at my calendar.
Good. Should we try to meet outside if the weather's good, and meet at City Hall if
Sounds good to me.
Sure.
and do we want to try to use the picnic tables, or would you rather use the pavilion, or I mean the gazebo?
Either
think
one's
the-
fine.
Gazebo works well for an outside meeting because it is covered. You have some coverage not only from the elements, but just from the sun, and
Okay,
it's kind of a practical suggestion. But
all right, well, let's plan on Cowley Park at 5 o'clock. There are built-in benches, but I know some of us the last time brought chairs. So we could kind of spread out even a little bit more. So if you've got a a portable chair, bring it, stick it in your car, and we'll see how many people we have. And I know the last time we had a community member that joined us for that.
Are you
meeting.
allowed to do happy hour at that?
Alcohol is not allowed in
I
the
know.
parks. I'm required to say that.
I was waiting for you.
I didn't say what that entailed, but okay.
We could be happy without alcohol, right?
But meetings are more fun with it.
Yeah.
I've heard. I mean, I've heard.
Is there any other business?
As far as ideas, the only one that I think we kind of touched on before is if we could do something with children down at the picnic table, some kind of a art project thing. I talked to my cousin who's an artist, and she's willing to donate her time to come up with some things. And so if that's something somebody we're interested in.
I think that'd be great. I've got a couple of grandchildren that would probably participate.
Yeah, I don't mind spearheading something like that. And I also was, as I've been walking through the parks, there's quite a bit of trash that needs to be picked up. So I don't know if we want to try to do, before everything really leaves out, some sort of a trash pickup day, where we could have some volunteers, or I don't know if we've ever done anything like that before, but I haven't gotten out with the trash bag, but I'm going to try to this weekend.
Oh, where are you seeing that at, Sally?
It's really, you have to kind of look off the trails up a little bit, but it's on Blue and Green, and it's kind of back. You're going to have to walk off the trail some to pick stuff up. Yeah. I think honestly, a lot of it, Ron, it seems like it's coming from the houses above and
Probably is.
falling
Probably
down.
blowing over the hill.
Yeah.
And then I think we also get some of the people that fish along the Orange Trail are sometimes leave stuff, and you kind of have to look down closer to the stream. And I've seen stuff around the benches there too that they'll leave beer cans.
Yeah, I did clean up around the parking lot, quite a few of those last week.
Hey, the other thing that's coming up, and I haven't seen it sending up the flower stalks yet, but we're coming into garlic mustard time. And that's something that we've usually just had a group of volunteers that when they hike through the parks, they pull it up, and it's easy to pull up by the roots in the spring. So I'll probably be sending a notice out on that when it's time to start pulling garlic mustard. Okay, if there's no other business, I guess we could have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You.
Sorry I was late. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.